Peter Meyer au public. Professeur émérite à l'université de Ville. Il est professeur dont il a été responsable d'un département notamment de planification et d'urbanisme, et il est spécialisé en économie de l'environnement. Nous lui avons demandé, comme Richard, de nous présenter en une dizaine de minutes les grands repères sur un autre secteur économique qui s'intéresse aux questions environnementales, en particulier au changement climatique, qui est celui des assurances. Alors, d'une manière un peu artificielle, on découpe en secteurs. L'objectif était qu'on ait deux angles d'attaque un petit peu différents sur ces questions-là, sur le développement soit d'investissement, soit de produits économiques et financiers. Merci Peter.
Merci beaucoup Taoufik. Priez de m'excuser, mais moi j'ai pas de vocabulaire professionnel en français et à cause de ça j'ai besoin de parler l'anglais. So let me then begin. Everything that you've heard so far has a great deal to do with risk. And risk is, after all, what the insurance industry is all about. So I'm going to go over a little bit about the insurance industry in the United States, but I think along the way, one of the things that I will be doing, because I have to, is telling you a great deal about the United States itself and about some of the strange ways in which things manifest themselves in the US. When I say there's no national market with regard to insurance, I can probably say that with regard to a lot of other products and services as well. Basically, with regard certainly to insurance, there is no national regulation. The insurance industry has managed to arrange things so that it is regulated by each of the individual states, which of course means that for the large insurance companies, they are actually much larger than the legal entities that attempt to regulate them. But what this also means is, if you think you have problems with differences among 25 member states of the European Union, we have 50 US states, and that makes it probably twice as difficult. And you can't think about the US states as being similar to the German Länder, because in fact the US states have got far more legal autonomy and in many ways much more power than the states in Germany. All right, so anyway, the states admit certain kinds of insurance coverages. That is to say, they regulate them. They dictate minimum terms, minimum coverages. They're permitted to set prices for these different coverages. And while the rates are in principle adjusted for the past claims costs, that is to say, how much the companies have had to pay when somebody has filed an insurance claim, those should be adjusted for future trends. But one of the things that happens is that you can't take the losses in one state or the profits in one state and then apply them to subsidize the rates that get charged in another. Theoretically, the states could demand new kinds of coverages of the insurance companies, but if they do, the insurers might then decide that they're not willing to write coverages in that state. In other words, you can decide that you want to write coverages, let us say, for the risk of hurricanes and other kinds of storms. Well, we'll write that coverage for all the states on the eastern coast of the United States which get the storms, except we won't write the coverage in Florida. That's not a hypothetical, that's real. State Farm Insurance Company did precisely that with regard to homes. Surplus lines is another peculiar kind of a character, kind of a coverage that exists. These are coverages which may be provided by insurance companies uniquely for particular products, particular problems, particular circumstances that the states permit to have occur, but they do not in fact regulate. So you have no national market, and I think you need to understand that when you look at insurance, and by the way, many, many other services and products in the US. Complicate things a little bit further. If I'm a very large company, and I have enough capital, I may have my own insurance company that insures me. That insurance company may in fact be regulated by one of the states. Each state has got its own captive rules When I say captive, I mean we're talking about a large integrated company that may provide a large variety of goods and services. My suspicion is, since Walmart was mentioned by Richard a little bit earlier, that Walmart has its own captive insurance company. The largest waste disposal company in the United States, Waste Management Incorporated, does in fact have its own captive insurance companies. The companies can pick the states in which they wish to incorporate their captives. Vermont is the preferred home state, and Vermont has made itself the preferred home state as a way to raise revenues. That is to say, if you register your captive company in Vermont, you have to pay Vermont for the privilege. So you also have, therefore, one of the other things that's happening here is that you have competition between the states shaping the insurance sector. Now, if I go back a little bit in the history of environmental insurance and environmental coverages in the United States, there are a couple of acronyms here that I need to explain. CGL, Commercial and General Liability Coverage. Think of it as the coverage that any company would want to have for itself and for its operations. It was once written for all risks on the basis of the occurrence. That is, if in fact the accident or the problem arose during the period in which the coverage was written. So if I'm covered in the year 1950 for commercial and general coverage, I can file a claim in the year 2009 for something that happened in the year 1950. The rise in claims for these very, very early coverages before they started to exclude things, after the U.S. passed something called CERCLA, it may be known by others as Superfund. It's the Comprehensive Environmental Response, Compensation and Liability Act. Led to a total exclusion of environmental claims. The problem here has to do with contaminated land. It has nothing to do with the climate, but it's ended up influencing the way in which climate coverages have become available. We have a situation in the U.S. where we have basically, call them archaeologists, looking for old commercial and general liability policies in 2009, as I said, to pay for cleanups of decades-old pollution. However, now, all sorts of environmental cover is only available on a claims-made basis. So think about this now when you look at trying to control risk. You have an insurance policy that exists for 1 year and 1 year only. It covers nothing but the claims that you make in that year. Something goes wrong a year later as a result of what happened that previous year, you can't get coverage for it. The states want to provide access to coverage, but they want to ensure the financial reliability of insurers. The financial reliability of insurers has, of course, been affected significantly by the economic crisis. I suspect you have seen, as we have seen, a great deal of coverage of a certain company called AIG, which has gotten into a significant amount of trouble, but all of them have lost significant amounts of money. But the states also want to hold down the costs. It's the same thing as offering lower taxes in order to get companies to locate within the states. This has resulted in a distortion of the market, and I think it's very important to understand this. The rates may not be adequate to cover the real costs or the foreseeable costs. The insurers are gambling that they're going to be able to make their money, or that after they suffer major losses, they're then going to be able to get an increase in the rates that they can charge. But the other thing that happens is, I don't know whether there's anyone out here who drives in such a manner that they have had many claims for accidents. But in the US, if that happens, you may not be able to find a private insurer that is willing to provide you coverage, yet you're dependent upon your car in order to go to work. Well, what you do is you participate, therefore you pay a higher rate, but you pay it to a state insurance pool. And if I'm an insurance company that wants to write coverage for automobiles in a particular state, let's say my state of Kentucky, I also am going to have to provide a certain amount of cover to the risk pool for the very high risk insurance. And that's another facet of the state regulation.